You're standing in line about to pay for something small, and you hesitate just long enough to notice it, not because you can't afford it, but because something in you needs to check first. You look at the price again, then your account, then back at the price, even though you already know it's fine. Nobody around you sees it, but you feel it every time. That pause didn't come from the cost. It came from a version of your life where money disappeared faster than it arrived, and your brain still hasn't accepted that it doesn't anymore. The moment feels small, but your body treats it like a signal. Your chest tightens, your focus narrows, and your mind starts scanning for what could go wrong. You are not thinking about the item anymore. You are thinking about what happens after. That is the shift. Financial pressure is not always created by numbers. Sometimes it is created by prediction. Your brain is not asking if you can afford this. It is asking what happens if things start to fall apart again. That question does not come from the present. It comes from repetition. It comes from a time when money was inconsistent, when plans changed without warning, and when stability never lasted long enough to feel real. Your brain learned that pattern, and it kept it. It does not care that your situation changed. It cares that it once didn't. So it keeps checking, even when nothing is wrong. It keeps tightening, even when there is no threat. It keeps treating normal moments like they could turn into problems. That is why the pressure feels constant, even when your income is stable. That reaction did not start in this moment. It started much earlier, in situations where money was not explained, but it was felt. You watched how people around you reacted to bills, to prices, and to unexpected costs, and your brain started recording patterns. Voices changed when money came up. Decisions became tense. Plans were adjusted or canceled without warning. You did not need full explanations. You only needed repetition. Over time, your brain connected money with instability, and it stored that connection as a rule. Not a thought, not an opinion, but a rule. When money moves, something changes. When money leaves, something might break. When money is low, tension increases. These patterns were not presented as lessons, but they became instructions anyway. You learned when to stay quiet, when to avoid asking, and when to accept that something was not possible right now. That phrase carries weight. It does not just describe a situation, it defines a limit, and your brain learned to treat that limit as permanent, even when it was temporary. The important part is not what happened once, it is what happened consistently. Inconsistent money creates consistent anticipation. You begin to expect interruption. You begin to prepare for loss before it happens. And because you were inside it, not observing it, your brain did not label it as a phase. It labeled it as reality. So now, even when your current situation is different, the pattern remains active. The environment changed, but the rule did not. Your brain still expects money to behave the way it did before, and it continues to run the same prediction every time you face even a small financial decision. Your brain did not store those patterns as ideas. It stored them as protection. The moment money became unpredictable, your system adapted to reduce risk. It learned to scan early, to hesitate, and to double-check before committing. That response was useful then. It helped you avoid making things worse when there was no margin for error. The problem is, your system does not measure time the way you do. It measures threat. If something once led to loss, it treats similar moments as potential danger, even if the outcome is now different. That is why the reaction feels automatic. You do not decide to hesitate. Your body moves first, and your thoughts follow after. You feel the tension before you explain it. You check before you justify it. This is not overthinking. It is anticipation. Your system is trying to stay ahead of a problem it believes can return at any moment. Stability does not turn this off. In some cases, it makes it stronger. When things are finally consistent, your system becomes more alert, not less. It starts looking for signs that the pattern might repeat. It becomes cautious during calm moments because calm did not last before. So instead of relaxing, it prepares. It treats stability as something temporary that needs to be protected. That is why the relief feels incomplete. The numbers say one thing, but your system says something else. And when those two do not match, your behavior follows the system, not the numbers. At some point, this stops being just a reaction and becomes part of how you see yourself. You are not just someone who checks, you are someone who has to check. That difference matters. The pattern turns into identity, and identity resists change even when the situation improves. If money was unstable for long enough, then being careful starts to feel correct, not temporary. Letting your guard down feels wrong, even when nothing is wrong. This is where the conflict begins. One part of you can see that your situation is different now. You have more control, more consistency, and more margin than before. But another part of you does not trust that shift. It treats your current stability like an exception, not a new baseline. So when you try to act differently, it pushes back. Spending without checking feels careless. Trusting your numbers feels risky. Not scanning for problems feels irresponsible. You are not just changing behavior, you are challenging a version of yourself that was built to survive uncertainty. That version does not disappear when things improve. It stays active because it believes it is the reason you are safe now. From its perspective, relaxing is not growth, it's exposure. So it keeps you in the same pattern, not to limit you, but to protect you. The problem is, what once protected you now starts to restrict you. It narrows your decisions, slows your actions, and keeps you operating inside rules that no longer match your reality. The pattern follows a clear sequence, even if you never notice it. A normal situation appears, something simple like paying, buying, or deciding. Your system scans for risk before you act. It checks your balance, replays recent spending, and looks for anything that could turn into a problem.
That scan happens fast, but it is detailed. Then it runs a projection, not of what is likely, but of what once happened. Loss, interruption, or a sudden change that forced you to adjust. That projection creates tension, and that tension influences your decision. You delay, you reduce, or you avoid. Even when you go through with it, the feeling stays. You do not feel neutral after. You feel like you crossed a line. That is the mechanism. It does not require low income. It only requires a learned association between money and instability. Over time, the repetition strengthens the loop. Checking reinforces the need to check again. Hesitating confirms that hesitation is necessary. Avoiding creates temporary relief, which makes the pattern feel effective, so the system keeps using it. The important part is that the system does not update itself automatically. It does not compare past conditions to current ones. It runs on recognition, not accuracy. If the situation looks familiar, it applies the same response. That is why small decisions can feel heavy, not because they matter that much, but because your system treats them like signals of something bigger. Over time, this stops looking like hesitation and starts shaping how you live. You begin avoiding situations where money becomes visible, not because you cannot handle them, but because your system prefers predictability. You choose the same places, the same habits, and the same decisions because they feel controlled. Anything outside that pattern feels exposed. You take longer to decide, even on things that should be simple, because your system wants more confirmation before it lets you move. That delay creates a second layer of pressure. Now you are not only reacting to money, you are reacting to your own reaction. You start noticing that other people move faster, decide easier, and seem unaffected in situations that slow you down. That comparison does not motivate you, it reinforces the belief that something could go wrong if you move the same way. So instead of expanding with your current situation, you operate inside the limits of your past one. Opportunities that require quick decisions feel uncomfortable. Spending that requires trust feels risky. Even positive changes get filtered through caution first. The pattern narrows your range without you realizing it. You become precise where you don't need to be, careful where there's no threat, and slow where speed would actually benefit you.
it doesn't feel like restriction, it feels like responsibility. That is what makes it hard to detect. From the outside, it looks like discipline. From the inside, it feels like control. But underneath both, it is still the same loop running. It is still your system preparing for a version of reality that is no longer active and shaping your behavior as if it could return at any moment. So now the situation is reversed in a way that is hard to see. You are no longer in the environment that created the pattern, but you are still operating inside it. The numbers changed, but the response did not. That means every decision you make is filtered through a version of reality that already ended. And if that stays in place, your future will not be shaped by what you have now. It will be shaped by what your brain still expects to lose. The question is not whether your situation improved. The question is whether your system will ever accept that it did, or keep reacting like it never happened.